They kicked down his door at midnight, thinking he was just another black man in the wrong neighborhood. But when the smoke cleared and the lights came on, they realized too late. They had just raided the home of a former Navy SEAL commander. The clock struck 12:03 a.m. when the sound of shattering wood ripped through the silence of the Brooks household. A heavy metallic thud, a crash of boots, and the echo of a shouted command, the kind that jolts a person out of a dream and into a nightmare. Inside, Marcus Brooks, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 40s, was already halfway up before the second crash came. His instincts, honed from decades of Navy SEAL operations, didn't let him freeze. They made him analyze. One sound was enough: the breach point, the door direction, number of boots, 4, maybe 5 intruders. But these weren't foreign soldiers. They were shouting in English. American accents, law enforcement. Marcus reached the hallway in 3 silent strides, his bare feet landing like controlled steps of a predator. He didn't panic. He processed. The tactical light beams swept across his living room walls, cutting through the shadows. His wife, Elena, had stumbled out of their bedroom, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. "Marcus, what's happening?" Before he could answer, a blinding white light hit their faces. "Police! GET on the ground!" someone roared. Marcus's training took over. He raised both hands slowly, voice steady but commanding. "This is a mistake. Identify your warrant." But they didn't hear him. One officer moved too quickly, another tripped over the sofa. The chaos turned clumsy, panicked, unprofessional. Then, in the confusion, Elena screamed. She'd been knocked off balance as one of the officers shoved past her, colliding hard against the frame of the kitchen counter. She fell, not bleeding but winded, clutching her ribs, gasping for air. Marcus's world tunneled. He dropped beside her, checking her breathing. Rapid, shallow, but steady. Rage flickered in his eyes, the kind only men who've seen real battle know how to contain. "Elena, stay with me," he whispered, voice like steel wrapped in silk. The commanding officer shouted again, "I said get on the ground!" But the man they were yelling at wasn't some street suspect. It was a decorated SEAL commander who had led missions in Iraq, Somalia, and the Pacific. A man trained to stay calm in the middle of gunfire, and right now, his silence was more terrifying than any shout. Marcus didn't comply immediately. He looked up, locking eyes with the nearest officer, young, jittery, with a trembling flashlight beam betraying his nerves. "You don't know who you just entered on," Marcus said in a tone that made the air itself freeze. The officer hesitated. "Sir, we had a—" "You had nothing verified," Marcus cut him off. "My house has cameras. Everything's recorded." The team's leader finally approached, sweat trickling down his forehead. "We received intel." "Intel?" Marcus rose to his full height, towering over them. "You break into a man's home at midnight, injure his wife, and you call that intel?" His voice was low, calm, and terrifyingly controlled. Then, something in Marcus's demeanor changed. The switch that SEALs learn to flip in the field. He knelt, lifted Elena gently into his arms, and started toward the front door. "You're done here," he said flatly. "Every second you stay makes this worse for you." No one dared move. The younger officer started to say something, but the leader raised a trembling hand. "Don't." The man they had just raided walked past them, barefoot, shirtless, holding his injured wife like a soldier carrying a flag he refused to drop. His steps were silent, but his presence roared louder than any siren outside. Outside, the night was filled with blue lights. More units had arrived, confused and uncoordinated. As Marcus crossed the threshold, a senior officer approached. Seeing the scene, his jaw dropped. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded. Marcus didn't answer. He just carried Elena to their SUV, laid her gently in the back seat, and looked over his shoulder once. "Tell your men," he said. "They just kicked in the door of Commander Marcus Brooks, U.S. Navy SEALs, retired. And I don't forget things easily." Then he closed the door and drove off into the night, taillights glowing red against the sea of blue strobes. Behind him, silence. No one breathed. And one rookie officer whispered what everyone else was thinking. "We just raided a SEAL commander's house." The commanding officer swallowed hard, realizing the gravity of their mistake. The paperwork, the cameras, the public fallout. But worse than all of it, the fact that the man they had just humiliated was trained to strike back with precision, not anger. And somewhere, deep inside, Marcus Brooks had already begun to plan exactly how he would uncover who sent that wrong address. And why. By sunrise, the world outside the Brooks home looked deceptively calm. Police tape fluttered in the breeze, officers whispered into radios, and a local news van idled a block away. But inside Marcus's SUV, parked outside St. Anne's Hospital, the calm was an illusion. Elena lay on a gurney behind glass doors, receiving treatment for bruised ribs and shock. Marcus stood by the window, motionless, jaw tight. Every cell in his body screamed to act, but years of SEAL training reminded him that anger without intel is chaos. He replayed the scene in his head, timings, voices, radio chatter. One voice in particular echoed, a sergeant yelling coordinates over comms, Unit 7, confirm 742 East Rowan. That address wasn't his. His house was 742 West Rowan. A single letter, a deadly error, or an excuse. A detective in a rumpled suit approached, clipboard in hand. "Commander Brooks," he began cautiously. "I'm Detective Hughes, Internal Affairs. I want to personally apologize." Marcus turned. "Apologies don't fix protocols." Hughes nodded, swallowing. "You're right. We're running a parallel inquiry. According to the dispatch log, the warrant was intended for a narcotics suspect 3 blocks over. The address got transposed during data entry." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Transposed?" He leaned closer. "You expect me to believe a special ops-style entry team was mobilized on uncorrected paperwork?" Hughes shifted uneasily. "That's what the file shows." Marcus's stare lingered until the detective dropped his gaze. "Then show me the file." Hughes hesitated. "That's classified pending review." Marcus gave a small, humorless laugh. "You're standing in front of a man who's held top-secret clearance for 20 years. Don't play bureaucracy with me." The detective sighed. "Commander, if you push too hard right now, they'll lock it down tighter. Let me find out what I can—" Marcus studied him. Hughes didn't look corrupt, just scared. "You've got 24 hours, Marcus said quietly. "After that, I go digging myself." That afternoon, Marcus drove home. The front door still hung off its hinges, splintered wood scattered across the porch. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Reporters shouted questions. "Commander, do you plan to sue? Was your wife injured?" He ignored them all. Inside, he examined every inch of the living room. Furniture overturned, glass cracked, tactical light burns on the walls. He crouched beside a footprint, a standard police combat boot, size 11. But smudged beside it was something else. A faint triangle emblem burned into the tread. Marcus frowned. That wasn't department issue. It was private contractor gear. He powered up his laptop, connecting to an encrypted drive he'd kept since his military days. Within minutes, he was cross-referencing supplier databases. Only one security firm used that mark, Helix Tactical Solutions, a government contractor specializing in joint operations support. Why would Helix be on a civilian warrant? His phone buzzed. Hughes again. "Commander, you were right. The warrant paperwork looks forged. The signature line for the judge, identical digital copy from another case. Someone used our system to insert that address." Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "So this wasn't a mistake?" "No, sir. Someone wanted your house targeted." Marcus's voice went cold. "Then start with Helix Tactical. I found their footprint here." There was silence on the line, then a low curse. "Helix has friends in high places. I'll dig, but be careful. If they planted the paperwork, they'll know you're onto them." Marcus ended the call and glanced at the hallway camera, still intact. He rewound the feed. At timestamp 00243, 5 figures breached the door. 4 wore standard police body armor. The 5th, in the rear, carried different equipment, sleeker, civilian. No badge, no name tag. He paused the frame. The man's face turned toward the camera for a fraction of a second, just long enough for recognition to sting. Lieutenant Ronan Vance, former SEAL, dishonorably discharged 7 years earlier. Marcus himself had signed the report that got him expelled for misconduct overseas. A slow exhale left Marcus's lungs. "So that's what this is," he murmured. "Revenge, hidden under the cover of law enforcement." He straightened, grabbing his phone again. "Hughes, change of plan. You're going to get me every deployment Helix has run this quarter, and any employee named Ronan Vance." The detective's voice crackled with disbelief. "Vance? You know him?" "Better than he knows himself." Marcus ended the call and stepped into the cool night air. The horizon was bleeding orange as the sun set behind the city. His wife would be released tomorrow. He promised himself she'd come home to safety and answers. He looked back at the wrecked doorway, jaw tightening. "You picked the wrong door, Vance," he muttered. In the distance, a black SUV idled for a moment before pulling away from the curb. Its tinted windows hid the man inside, but Marcus caught the reflection of that same triangle logo on the bumper. Helix was already watching. Marcus slipped his old SEAL tag from his pocket, running his thumb over the etched words, "Honor through precision." He slid it around his neck and whispered, "Then precision it is." By sunrise, the quiet suburban street looked like a war zone. Police tape fluttered, bullet casings glimmered, and neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering about the ex-soldier. Inside the house, Marcus sat beside Layla's hospital bed, his eyes hollow but unbroken. Machines beeped steadily, the only rhythm in a room that had lost all peace. Her arm was bandaged, and though her wound was not life-threatening, the damage to their home, their dignity, and their sense of safety was far worse. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Another message from Captain Lewis, his old Navy SEAL commanding officer. The text read simply, "Saw the footage. Don't do anything stupid, Marcus." He stared at it for a long time. The news had already gone viral. Police raid, wrong home, woman injured in botched operation. The world only saw fragments of the truth. What they didn't see was the man behind those calm eyes, a man who had led rescue missions in Afghanistan, who had trained operatives to remain cool under fire, and who now stood powerless in his own country. As dawn bled into morning, Detective Rachel Grant entered the hospital room. She was different, calm, composed, and carrying a folder that looked thicker than the case report. "Commander Brooks," she greeted, using his old title. Marcus lifted his gaze, surprised. "I served on the base in Norfolk when your team's photos were still on the wall," she said. "I know who you are, and I know what they did last night was not just a mistake." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Then tell me, what was it?" Rachel hesitated. "The warrant was falsified. Someone intentionally listed your address under an anonymous drug tip. It wasn't random. That hit harder than any bullet." He leaned back, fists clenched. "So someone sent them to my door?" "Yes," Rachel said quietly. "And judging by the coordination, it wasn't street level. Someone with clearance manipulated the data system." Marcus exhaled slowly, SEAL training taking over again, emotions buried under discipline. "Then I'll find out who—" Rachel nodded, lowering her voice. "I'm off duty after today. I can feed you what I know, but officially, I was never here." As she left, Marcus turned toward Layla, gently touching her hand. "You rest, baby. I'll handle the rest." His tone was soft, but beneath it steel. Later that day he returned home. The door hung off its hinges. Splintered wood, glass and torn curtains told the story of the night before. But amid the mess, Marcus found something the officers hadn't noticed. A small body cam lens wedged behind the kitchen counter. His security camera had recorded the raid. He powered it on. The footage played. The moment the door was kicked in, he saw the lead officer, Sergeant Harlan, shouting, "Get down! Get down!" And then, just before the shot fired, Marcus noticed something unusual. One of the officers hesitated, looked toward Harlan and said, "Sir, wrong house," before the chaos erupted. Marcus froze the frame. That hesitation told him everything. Someone had ordered them to go through with the raid even after realizing the mistake. He copied the footage to a drive, slipped it into a waterproof pouch, and placed it in a steel locker under his garage floor, a habit from his Navy days. He knew the system. Evidence vanished fast when the wrong people wanted it gone. When he came back upstairs, his reflection caught in the shattered mirror by the hallway. The man staring back wasn't just a husband anymore. He was a commander again, calculating, alert and dangerous to anyone who thought his silence meant surrender. As thunder rolled outside, Marcus picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in years. When the line picked up, a gruff voice answered. "Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again, Commander." "It's time," Marcus said simply. "They came to my home." The voice on the other end paused. Then, "Send me coordinates. We move tonight." Marcus hung up, looked once more at Layla's photo and whispered, "They wanted a raid? Let's show them what one really looks like." Night fell over the city, quiet and deceptive, the kind of stillness Marcus Brooks had learned to distrust on missions overseas. Inside his garage, the lights were dim, the hum of his computer the only sound. He had converted his small workbench into a tactical command post. Multiple monitors flickered with data feeds, police radio logs, drone maps, and a live trace on the officers who had raided his home. Marcus wasn't seeking revenge, he was seeking truth. And the truth, he knew, always left footprints. He watched as encrypted files began to decrypt, thanks to the hacking skills of his old teammate Ethan Cole, a cyber operations expert who owed Marcus his life from a classified rescue mission years ago. "Got something," Ethan's voice came through the earpiece. "Check file code X-ray 12. Marcus clicked the file. What appeared on screen froze him. An email chain between Sergeant Harlan and Deputy Chief Porter, dated 2 days before the raid. The subject line read, "Subject Brooks, Asset Recovery Operation." The message said, "Execute under cover of drug warrant. Target has previous military clearance. Objective, secure intel device rumored from SEAL operations, no media exposure." Marcus leaned back, realization hitting him. This wasn't about drugs. They wanted a classified drive, a SEAL-issued encrypted chip he'd kept from an old operation. He never reported it missing because it contained the names of corrupt contractors overseas, people Porter had once worked with during a private security deal. "This was a setup," Marcus muttered. "They used my wife's pain to cover their theft." Ethan's voice hardened. "You want me to expose them?" Marcus paused. "No, not yet. We do this by the book, my book." He disconnected and grabbed his old military duffel. Inside it were relics of another life, his SEAL uniform patch, a worn tactical map, and a small flash drive marked Op Redemption. He placed the new evidence beside it, zipped the bag shut, and stood tall. Outside, a black SUV approached. Detective Rachel Grant stepped out. "You ready for this?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Let's end it." They drove to City Hall, where a press conference was being held about police accountability. Deputy Chief Porter was front and center, smug behind his podium, talking about community rebuilding. Marcus walked in through the side entrance, calm but unmistakable. The cameras instantly swiveled toward him. Reporters began whispering, "That's the Navy SEAL from the raid story." Porter faltered mid-sentence when he saw him. "Commander Brooks, I wasn't expecting—" Marcus cut him off. "No, but you were expecting me not to survive." His voice echoed through the hall. He plugged a small drive into the media screen on stage. Instantly, footage played, the body cam recording from his house. The crowd gasped as the scene unfolded, showing the moment an officer shouted, "Wrong house," and Porter's voice over the radio replying, "Proceed as planned." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, Porter's face drained of color. Marcus stepped closer to the mic. "You came to my home under a false warrant. You injured my wife. You called it protocol. But what you really wanted was to erase proof of your own corruption." Porter tried to speak, but Rachel held up a hand. "We have internal communications and a warrant falsification record signed under your name. You're under arrest, Chief." Uniformed officers, Internal Affairs, this time moved in. Porter shouted, "You'll regret this, Brooks." Marcus stared at him coldly. "I already did. Last night." The room fell silent as Porter was escorted out. For a moment, the world saw not a victim, not a suspect, but a soldier standing for truth. As Marcus stepped outside, reporters swarmed, flashing questions. He ignored them all until one young journalist asked softly, "Commander, what now?" He stopped, looked toward the sunrise and said, "Now, I go home. To my wife." At the hospital, Layla was sitting upright when he arrived, watching the news replay. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. He smiled gently, placing a hand on hers. "It's over," he whispered. "They can't hurt anyone else." She touched his face. "You didn't go to war, did you?" Marcus smiled faintly. "No. I just brought the truth home." As they held each other, the camera outside their hospital window captured the morning light breaking through the clouds, a symbol of justice restored, not by violence, but by courage and discipline. Marcus Brooks, the man they thought was just another black face in the wrong neighborhood, had reminded the world what it truly meant to serve and protect, with honor.